That's kind of why I'm a little sad that the Raptors lost Marc and Ibaka, but it is what it is. That's a topic for a different day.
I mean, it could be, but also, I mean, it could also not be because the moves could
Fair
quickly
enough.
be talked about in the sense of did they do enough to, instead of looking at the individual moves, I guess the big picture is did the Raptors really do enough to make up for it? Because looking at it, like a guy like Aron Baynes, of course, he does a lot of like statistically, he shoots the three about as good as Gasol or Ibaka did last
Yeah.
year. He has the ability to be a hard nosed defender like Ibaka. He obviously has the ability to rebound. He's not a bad center by any means, but the big thing you definitely lose out on is the passing ability of Marc Gasol for the Toronto Raptors. The ability
Yeah.
to sit him at the top of the three-point line, which pretty much every time he was on the floor, it felt like he did, and he either had an open three to take, or he was able to circulate the ball and actually move the offense. So I'm interested to see how that will be replaced the most, I think.
Yeah, that's probably his IQ is the fact that he's probably the best passing big outside of Nocic in the whole league. He's had a career where he's respected enough with his passing IQ that players know how to feed off him, to cut off him. He gets 4 assists a game.
Yeah, forces the game. I saw that.
Which is pretty solid for a guy who only plays about 22 minutes a game.
Yep.
But on the other hand, if you think of Baynes came off a career year. He put up about 12 points per game. His rebounding is nowhere near Gasol, but Gasol didn't really have a good rebounding year last year either. Anyways, but does Baynes make up for the combination of Ibaka and Gasol? No. On the other hand, though, you are giving more responsibility in the hands of Siakam. This gives Siakam more creativity on offense. Gives the ball in his hands more at the point. We already have 2 point guards on the court at all times. You didn't really have the chance as much as Siakam was able to feed up Gasol. He wasn't able to develop enough of that he's a man mentality, which I think it's really going to push next year. It also forces us to go smaller a lot more often. We really proved in the playoff that OG was more of a power forward at times. Siakam can play that small ball 5. So I think it actually will turn out to showcase how the Raptors have strengths in other areas. Plus, it actually leaves their salary cap completely wide open for next year, and where they can actually bring in somebody. And if they prove to be still that 50-win team without having Ibaka or Gasol come back, people are doubting them right now. I think they're going to prove them wrong.
Yeah, the only, I guess, way, like, there's 2 ways that I'm looking at it. A, it is, like I said, in the sense that Baynes can still shoot the 3, still stretch the floor. You don't have to make as many changes to the offense, but I do think, oppositely of you, I think they're actually going to play a lot more down low next year. I think they're going to play big. They also picked up Alex Len. The reason I don't like the moves in general is that as much as it might just be easy to say, oh, well, these guys played on that team and that's how that team ended up, so the Raptors are going to end up the same way. They did essentially fill out their team with role players from teams that were not that good, or at least playoff teams, in the sense of Len and Baynes were basically both Phoenix Suns. I believe Len ended up finishing the year in Sacramento, or he might have even played the whole year there. But I mean, that team with Alex Len was not very good. Sacramento with Alex Len, it did not help them either. I don't think Alex Len really helps that much, and I feel like maybe they're overvaluing what he's going to bring to them a bit. You definitely hope he steps up a bit. I believe he still has the ability to somewhat shoot. He's not awful, but again, like I said, typically when you have role players and it's still not really contributing to your bench and actually seeing success in the win column, to bring Alex Len in, I don't necessarily think he's going to contribute to many more wins versus obviously Ibaka and Gasol. They are definitely going to do that.
Alex, so whenever I was saying that, I think that their change of pace is going to happen. Baynes is going to still hit a lot of threes, and they're actually going to come out to being Siakam going to take control, and they're going to do very well. I was talking about the Baynes pickup. Len is injury backup at best, in my opinion. I completely on board with you. I don't think he moves the needle. I think he'll play the minutes.
That's what I think. That's the issue.
There's a potential where he turns into like a Stanley Johnson next year. He has proven to be an okay player.
Mm-hmm.
I think he will be there to fill those minutes if there is an injury. But I think that Baynes and the natural Boucher, can't forget about Chris Boucher, Bobby Boucher's cousin. Guy shoots threes like he's Canadian. Wait. But yeah, no, I think that Chris Boucher is actually going to take a lot of those minutes up. I think he played a lot of those minutes last year because Gasol and Ibaka were both hurt at different times. And Boucher is someone that I think he'll actually end up starting by the end of the year just because he fits in with the team's mentality of he can shoot the three-pointer fairly well. He can defend the paint. He's not the biggest guy, so he's not going to play against the Dwight Howards, maybe Joel Embiid, but he's not going to play against the Dwight Howards or probably Embiids of the league or the Goberts. But I think that he'll actually play center by the end of the year just because he has his blocking ability, he can shoot the three, and he can run. And that's what they're really focusing on this year, especially with Siakam and VanVleet. They're going to run. And I think that Boucher, by the end of the year, he's going to be actually starting, and he'll fill in that role, and he'll actually change what that role was when Ibaka and Gasol were there.
I mean, it's possible. I see him I wouldn't be surprised if he's a 12-8 guy, but if he is, I really just see him probably playing more at the 4 off the bench. My issue is really for the Toronto Raptors, seeing how the last, basically, basketball they played went in that series where you didn't rely on Siakam so much, and in the end, he did choke. And at least then he still had, like I said, the Gasol and Ibaka to rely on. And now at the end of the day, at some point, it is going to be a guy like Alex Len. And I do not want Alex Len to have the ball for me in Game 7 of Round 2 against the NBA playoffs against a team like a Boston Celtics when I'm down by 4 with 2 minutes left. And that's just the reality of it. I would much rather Marc Gasol, and anyone would. And again, it's not to say that Len was the guy who's supposed to replace them. But at the end of the day, that's what they had to settle for. It was a combination of Baynes, Len, and Boucher, and it's hard to justify that combination over the combination of Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol.
But they are going to play faster.
Definitely.
And as much as Ibaka put up stats last year, he sucked the ball. He sucked the ball up though.
Yes.
He slowed down the ball, which is actually really good at times. It's fantastic at times because it slows the game down. But if they can find a way with Nick Nurse to push through that, not needing to slow the game down and really just tiring out the other teams, and then maybe it adds a different side of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it the other day with how great Nick Nurse is at drafting, scouting, and getting the best out of each player, and that's probably what's going to happen again. I mean, as bad as, like I said, those replace, not as bad, but as much as it doesn't fully replace those two players, it obviously does a good amount to replace them. It still keeps them on track, like we said the other day, to be that 50, probably 55 win team. Not going to be surprised at all if they're a top 3 seed, probably more leaning towards they are going to be still. It's really just a matter of, like I said, in those crunch time
I think
minutes,
they likely are as well.
Yeah. It's just like I said, in those crunch time minutes, who's going to support the Siakam, VanVleet, and maybe Lowry? That's just what it's going to come down to.
Hopefully, OG and Powell. OG and Powell.
Definitely.
Natural progression.
Definitely. I just mean in the sense of what Ibaka and Gasol we're doing, who's going to replace that, and you just hope it's these guys. And Baynes is obviously the most likely, and then, like you said, Boucher, I would say, is 2, Len, obviously 3, and we just have to hope there's no injuries along the way.
And hopefully Siakam can play more of those center minutes. With a lot of these centers in the league that aren't that large, he can really just dominate them with just how fast he is.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it ourselves earlier too. Who's the power forward? Tatum, or is he a power forward or small forward? Is Durant a power forward or small forward? And if they are power forwards, which they typically, like you said, they are now, do you want Siakam guarding those guys? Or like you said, do you want Siakam moving to center, guarding a guy who's a bit slower, doesn't have to move around the floor and stretch it a bit, and he's still going to be able to actually play the post position versus just having to match him, stretching the floor, and just trying to go shot for shot with him, which as good as he is as a scorer, you don't want him to have to go shot for shot with guys like Durant and such.
No, put OG on him. The guy's a mean defender, and he proved it a couple years ago whenever he was defending LeBron in the playoffs. He didn't really get the chance to play whenever we had that great run in the playoffs, but I think he showed this year that he's ready for the challenge, and I think he's probably going to be our breakout player next year.